future. A final plat is also being processed concurrently with this application to create the proposed lots that we're reviewing tonight. And these were approved by the Board of County Commissioners this morning. Based on the findings in this report, staff is recommending approval with conditions. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? I would like a clarification, and maybe just because I wasn't reading it correctly. In the staff report, you have on page 2, the proposed land use, and the land use listed or prohibited on lot 1.
Correct.
For instance, the 24-hour convenience and the car wash and outdoor storage.
Mm-hmm.
But on the top page of this document, it lists land use matrix, and under 24-hour convenience, it says, I'm assuming these are permitted uses because it says used by special review. So is that not in contradiction to the other list?
They should match. The uses are the same. It's just that the review process that they would go through, some are permitted, and then some are have to go through a use by special review.
So they're not prohibited?
The ones with asterisks on the plan set are the ones that would not be allowed on lot 1.
Where does that say that on the plan?
On the plan, look in the matrix, and it has after the description.
I see the
and then above it has narrative. The text has
under notes.
Yeah, under notes. So the reason for that was that those uses were more high intensity, and we felt it wasn't compatible with being next to a residential.
Okay, I was looking at the notes.
Okay.
Being above.
Right. Usually it's below, but yeah, right.
Because outdoor storage looks like it's permitted, a principal permitted use, but on the list in here, it's not. I just find that really confusing.
It was just these are what they listed as what they wanted in the staff report. Those are the uses that they listed that were would show up in the matrix. And then what's land uses that are prohibited on lot 1 are the ones with the X's. Does that make it more?
Lots can have.
Yes, they could propose that going through a review.
One of these prohibited.
Correct. Only right. That's right.
Which begs the question. So those are on the west side. There's a development that I believe is multifamily. So the reason that these restrictions were there was so it was not an intensive use that would disturb, let's say, the residents that are living on the parcel to the west.
Correct. So
that begs the question, to the east, it looked like there was at least multifamily developments.
That's across the street. So there's somewhat of a buffer.
Okay, because that was my question. Like, to me, there was wasn't there a similar concern to the east?
Yeah, there's more of a buffer. This would be smack right up dad to it.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
We do have the applicant here and the representative, and they're going to provide a short presentation for you.
We'll hear from the applicant.
Yeah.
Can't multitask, so do one thing at a time. So I'm just going to hold this because it's not long enough and I'm too tall. So good evening. My name is Ryan McBreen with Norris Design, 1101 Banach Street, 80204. We have a brief presentation. I think this is pretty straightforward, as Molly alluded to in her discussion. And apologize, I guess the screen's not working tonight, so you're going to have to crane your neck a little bit. But you don't have too much. Oops, I don't know what happened there. I'm just going backwards. Just give people an idea of what's going on. We've all seen Copperleaf grow, and everything that's been going on in the last 15 plus years on it. We're looking at this 6-acre site there in the north central portion. It's one of the last remaining undeveloped sites within Copperleaf, right up there, just to make sure we're all familiar with it. As part of this FCP and the plat that was approved this morning, 6 commercial lots were formed along their pads, and it's in conformance with the underlying Copperleaf zoning. This FCP specifically deals with landscaping along that edge there. It talks about the land uses, as you guys already discussed, and future development on those pad sites will come down the road as those users are identified. So this is kind of the pretty picture, so you can see how it fits in the scheme of things. To the west is the KB Homes duplex product there that we talked about. To the south is the Grand Peaks multifamily, and then you have Piccadilly on the eastern boundary and Quincy on the north. So, this is a pretty straightforward request. Right now, this shows the landscaping that's proposed as part of this application along Piccadilly and Quincy, which is consistent with the rest of the Copperleaf landscaping to the east and west along Quincy and then south along Piccadilly. So it's going to fit right in with everything that's already been going on out there. The existing monument sign that's on the corner of Quincy and Piccadilly, that's staying, and the landscape's just complementing it as we go forward. I'm not going to read the applicable standards, but you guys have those in your staff report. But as Molly said, I believe this meets all the standards. Staff does too, and staff is recommending approval. So tonight we ask for your approval. I'm here to answer any questions as well as our project team. Appreciate your time tonight.
Questions?
The existing monument that's on that corner of Piccadilly and Quincy, considering the use, is the view angle sufficient for the increase in traffic that's going to be turning?
You mean, just view for traffic?
Yeah.
Yes, that's something that's looked at, and at the time that sign was approved, that would have all been looked at.
Looked at that point, even though the traffic was not quite as intense as it would be once this development is.
Well, I think they anticipated that because this corner has been looked at as being commercial uses. So, and Piccadilly has always been kind of planned to be a main entrance, one of the main entrances into Copperleaf. So I would assume, and if during this review, if staff had any concerns about it, they would have raised it. I don't believe there were any concerns raised about that. So staff shaking their head back there, so I don't think there's a concern. So.
Hi, I have a question. So what is your proximity to the multifamily to the south? Because those lots 2 through 6 can, basically take on any of these uses. So
sure. Well, obviously it depends on how each of those lots develop, right? Whether it's pushed forward or back, obviously depending on setbacks. But that private drive is a standard 2-lane road each way. So, and then you have the buffer on the south side. I don't know exactly, but I'm guessing from the south
about 30 feet wide.
Probably at least. And one advantage to multifamily as opposed to, say, the property to the west, which the city or the county was concerned about, is the property to the west is a for sale unit, right? So when you buy that unit and then something objectionable comes in there, then you're in trouble. But to the south side, when you have a for rent, if they don't like that use, either that use is already there, they know that, and they go on the other side of the community, or if they don't like it, they can move to the other side of the community too. So there's a little more flexibility there. So I think that was the thinking there. And honestly, there's probably going to be a lot of uses here that these folks are going to like to be adjacent to. So that's kind of our thinking with it. So I know Grand Peaks, we actually worked on that project. I don't believe they have any issues, concerns about the uses going on there. So
thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, we will open the public hearing for Copperleaf. We have no one signed in, but you're welcome to step forward if you wish to ask questions or make comments. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Molly, do you have any other comments for us?
I do not.
We'll bring it back to the Planning Commission for consideration.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Mrs. Lattis, make a motion.
In the case of SDP 19-003, Copperleaf filing number 23, specific development plan, the Planning Commissioners have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and any public comment is presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to conditions 1 through 4.
We have a motion made by Mrs. Latsis for approval. Do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Okay. Diane Cheffin has seconded the motion. Any other comments? And we will call for a vote on approving the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Copperleaf is approved. And our last item is number 2, case number LR19-006, comprehensive plan amendment for urban residential densities, and Alan White will present us with the plan.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Alan White, a planner with the Public Works and Development Department. Before you at this time is case number LR19-006, a comprehensive plan amendment for the urban residential densities portion of the comprehensive plan. The county attorney has reviewed the public notice and has determined that staff has met all the public notice requirements. Thereby, you have jurisdiction to hear this case tonight. I know we had some problems getting packets to commissioners this past week. If there's anyone that didn't receive the staff report and the supplemental addendum, I have additional copies for you tonight if you need them. Does anybody need them?
I got it, Ed. I'm good.
Go to the recycle. I have a short presentation just to go over a few things. Sorry, I didn't know you'd have to turn your heads. Wanted to review a couple of items. One is the infill parcel inventory that you asked us to prepare. I wanted to review some of the findings that we've found supporting the proposed amendment, answer any questions from the Commission, hear any public testimony if there is any tonight, and then finally wrap up, hopefully with adoption of a resolution to amend the comprehensive plan. You'll recall on December 3rd that we presented results of the inventory of vacant infill parcels throughout the county. We looked at the areas that were designated for urban residential, and that's the darker yellow on this map. A lot of the darker yellow areas are already developed. They don't contain any vacant land. One of those areas is Copperleaf, which is still under development, but primarily built out. So the vacant parcels are indicated with the orange circles, and they were numbered accordingly, and we presented a spreadsheet that showed what the existing use was and the existing lot size and other information. The conclusion of the inventory was that the proposed amendment to the urban residential category would only affect about 10 to 12 parcels as identified during our inventory. And I say 10 to 12, depends on how you number them, if you group them or don't group them together. And most importantly, each of the parcels included in the inventory would need to be rezoned to accommodate smaller lots, single-family detached developments, or single-family attached developments. So you would still see any project that came in those areas that wanted to do a smaller lot project, whether it would be attached or detached. And then, of course, you would hear those requests at a public hearing, and then they move on to the Board of County Commissioners for a final decision on the zoning. So, the comprehensive plan amendment, and you've seen this before, is to adjust the densities for single-family detached from 1 to 6 to 1 to 8 units per acre, and for single-family attached and small multifamily units from amending it from 6 to 12 units to the acre to 8 to 16 units to the acre. You had asked us to create some criteria for the 12 to 16 units per acre density, and we reviewed those criteria back on December 12th, and these are what those criteria are. Looking at if there's some unusual shape or topography that affects the site, such that normal development practices can't be followed. A suitable transition is provided, and we've listed some examples of how a transition could be provided. Thirdly, avoid placing long building frontages along common property lines, and then it integrates into the existing neighborhood by providing sidewalk, trail, bike lane, open space, or other linkages. And then finally, that it follows the county's residential, small lot residential development design guidelines and standards as currently exist in the Land Development Code. We did send this amendment out on referrals. 104 agencies were contacted, and we received comments back. Well, we received responses back from, I think it was 21 jurisdictions, 22 jurisdictions. Most of them have no comments or no objections to the proposed amendment. There were some comments that were contained in the supplemental memorandum from Douglas County, the Cherry Hills Heights Water and Sanitation District, and the City of Littleton that we wanted to respond to because they weren't just no comments. The Douglas County comments were requesting that any development of the density proposed in this amendment would provide suitable transitions from developments in Douglas County. Well, that's what number 2 is about in this list of criteria for you to consider when looking at those types of developments. We were also a little perplexed about the impact on Douglas County. The closest area that is zoned or shown as urban residential is a mile away, across the state park, across a highway, and across a reservoir. So we're not too concerned, I think, about compatibility issues.
We put a reservoir in the middle.
Cherry Hills Heights is the subdivision located at the northeast corner of Hampton and University. It's a small subdivision. They have their own water and sanitation district. And I talked to a representative of the district and assured him that this doesn't change the zoning. This is only a comprehensive plan amendment. Anything that would be proposed at a higher density in that subdivision, which I don't see happening, by the way, would have to go through the rezoning process. It would have to come to Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. I hope I convinced him that it really is not going to affect that subdivision. And then finally, the City of Littleton commented that we should make all these criteria mandatory, and all of these criteria should have to be met. And we didn't do that because we want to provide you some flexibility in your decision making. And some of these criteria are not going to apply if there's a commercial parcel adjacent to one of these parcels, for example.
Rule the land development code be required.
Right, and that was the other point we wanted to make, that this is not intended to be regulatory, and making it mandatory for all these criteria to be met borders on becoming regulatory. So they also suggested that we add a sixth bullet point that the impacts of such development should be mitigated. Well, that's really part of the development review process when zonings and subdivisions are addressed. The Land Development Code assures us that those impacts are identified and mitigated. So we didn't make any changes based on those referral comments. So this is a staff-initiated amendment to the comprehensive plan, and we brought this forward, number one, because we wanted to make the comprehensive plan consistent with the residential zoning districts that were recently approved in the Land Development Code reorganization. And that's specifically that the R2A and R2B zone districts, which allow for single-family detached residential lots of 5,600 square feet, were supported by the comprehensive plan. So we're bringing the comprehensive plan and those two residential zone districts into alignment. We're also aligning the comprehensive plan with the R2B residential zone district in terms of allowing townhome development on a minimum lot area of 2,000 square feet. And as I mentioned before, all of the parcels we identified in the urban residential land use category would require rezoning to come before you at a public hearing to accommodate any type of smaller lot residential development, either detached or attached. One thing I wanted to note, we brought this up on December 3rd, but there's an overlap between single-family attached and multifamily land use categories in terms of densities. We have 8 to 16 for single-family attached, and multifamily is 13 plus with no cap to that potential density. And one of the reasons we proposed this was because currently densities greater than 12 units per acre in the urban residential category require a comprehensive plan amendment to the multifamily category. Well, if you approve an amendment to a multifamily category, you don't necessarily guarantee there's going to be a townhome development up to 16 units to the acre. That applicant could leave, the land could be sold, and someone could come in and propose a multifamily development, 16, 18, 20, 24 units to the acre. So this might encourage developers in those areas to not seek higher density developments and come in and do a townhome development. Just as an aside, any multifamily project still requires a planned unit development. There is not a residential zone district that was created in the LDC reorganization that is a straight zone district for multifamily development. So any type of multifamily development has to come through as a PUD, and you review those. The Oregon County Commissioners reviews those. And one last item I wanted to mention was that Trey County Health Department did comment that they supported this proposal because the increased densities support walkable, healthy communities in addition to promoting a variety of housing types, including more attainable housing options. That's kind of how we started off this project, but I'm glad they provided that comment because this is one tool in our toolbox. It's not the answer, and it's not the end-all answer to helping address the attainable or affordable housing challenge in the county. Staff is recommending approval of this comprehensive plan amendment with the findings as contained in the staff report. There are motions included in the staff report for your consideration, and the resolution 200001 is included in the staff report. That is the resolution you would be adopting if you decide to move forward with this amendment tonight. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. White?
Mr. Chapman. So I was ill on the 3rd, and I'm sorry I missed this because there we go. Because I have a keen interest in this, as you know. So what is the impact on this on 4 square mile? Anything?
None.
None. It's just in these areas.
Yes.
Okay. So,
but
will there be an impact to 4 square mile?
No, unless we change the policies and densities and land use categories in the 4 square mile plan. That's a whole separate document.
Okay. Well, sometimes you change one thing as you're moving. The train's going down the track to change some other things down the road. Yep. So I just wanted to see if there was anything on the schedule. Okay. Then, so you mentioned 2 things in here that I really sort of struggled with. One was that the aging of the population. And the county just sent out those statistics here in the last week. And the largest growing group are people aged 65 and over. And I just can't believe that that group creates a demand for maybe, yes, for smaller lots, but not necessarily for townhomes. So I struggle with that. And I also struggle with that the higher density for single-family detached projects can be made affordable. They can be made affordable, but in all the years that I have been on the Planning Commission, I have not seen any developer come through and make their units in the affordable category and present those to us. So I think it's nice to say that, and I understand why you're saying that, but let's not kid ourselves. It ain't going to happen unless you do something about it.
Unless some other things happen.
Yeah. So I guess when I read this, I felt like I was being sold on these, trying to sell me on these things, and I thought, no, it's just not gonna happen, and we just end up with more crowded housing, and everything is over $400,000, and this young migrant population, of young people coming in here. I don't mean migrant as in the diverse population that we have coming in here that's young can't afford the housing that we have. And so it just struck me in that the amendment would provide developers and property owners with flexibility in providing a range of housing options. That was number 5. And I thought, is that one of the biggest goals here? It struck me that it was. So I just, thank you, that's it. I get frustrated at this.
Probably as frustrated as staff is in trying to address the problem.
Yeah.
I can tell you from our experience in my office, everybody's going to more affordable production housing now.
Well, that would be good. I'd like to see some developers come here with more affordable options.
Yeah, for rental type production.
Yeah.
So would we.
I know. That's.
Any other questions for Alan?
So,
we have more.
So currently, though, it only affects the lots that you've identified, the 10 to 12.
Yes.
Earlier. So right now, that's really all this is affecting. But you don't really see it spreading beyond those.
No, because most of those other dark yellow areas on the map, let's see if I can go back.
Right.
They're all PUDs.
So as an acreage piece, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
It's back there somewhere.
Yeah.
Next one. Yeah. All the areas in dark yellow near.
All those parcels that we were talking about on, I forget which meeting it was, that were very odd shaped and
Yeah.
kind of locked away.
The majority of them, I think we're going to see along South Platte Canyon Road.
Right.
The two over on Parker Road. I don't know what will happen with those, and the two in Area 7.
They just
Probably.
don't want to be giving one more tool to a developer to find something else, anyplace else, and be able to pull this out and go, well, we meet this. You see what I'm saying? It's like we're trying to fix a problem.
Yeah.
Like was being said down here. I think we're just going to be making it.
Most of those, I'll go out on a limb and say all those other dark yellow areas are either developed or under a PUD that is continuing to develop, like Copperleaf or Prosper. And the likelihood of those being proposed for a rezoning and further subdivision into small lots is pretty slim.
Just to be clear, though, aside from the sub-area plans, this applies countywide.
Right. It would apply to those yellow areas.
Only in the urban area.
Right.
Alan, I've got one question.
Sure.
So you sent out 104 referrals. You got 22 back.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than the 14 initially. But still, do you feel, and the Planning Commission feel that that's a good representation?
I think it's fairly typical of a project like this. When we did the entire comprehensive plan, it was about the same number of agencies that responded. Different ones, but about the same number.
So are there any other cities or subdivisions or anything that you feel should you maybe get a response from, I guess, around those areas?
Yeah, I was happy to get comments from Douglas County, City of Sheridan, the City of Centennial, Greenwood Village responded. And those were the areas I was really concerned about.
Okay, so, and that's all I wanted to know is that, that was a large mailing, and then you get pretty slim response back. But if it answered the areas that we're talking about here, then you feel comfortable with that.
I do.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I would imagine, because when the land development code was updated to reflect these densities, because really I kind of view this as you're trying to align the plan with zoning that is available to someone who wants to develop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are those densities, the 1 to 8, and was it, 8 to 16 or 9 to 16, whatever it is, are those consistent with other jurisdictions in the metro area? Like Denver, Aurora, Adams County?
I think the lot sizes are consistent, the lot sizes of those zone districts, and the densities are consistent with those lot sizes.
So this is pretty
It
consistent
doesn't directly answer your question.
Well,
but
and it does, and as far as other PUDs that I'm familiar with, it's kind of the trend of where a lot of these lot sizes are going. If you look at Midtown and Adams County, even Lowry, a number of the current developments, because of the cost of development, it's driving a lot of these lot sizes to get the numbers to market. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more time. So Do you have, just out of curiosity, do you have applicants kind of sitting in the wings waiting for something like this to change on any of these current infill projects?
One.
Okay.
One.
Just trying to see if there's like, are we really trying to help somebody, or are we just pushing paper here?
We're trying to align the comprehensive
Thanks.
zoning document. And also, I mean, because of this one application that came in, we've got a hole in our comprehensive plan.
Yeah, you'd have to amend the comp plan and meet the land development code that's available to them.
Yeah, and then you open up the floodgates to density by doing that.
Right.
And there's one other application that's coming in along South. I don't know if I should say this.
It could possibly be hypothetically an application.
Just say there's a pending.
There's another application along South Platte Canyon Road that is unaffected.
It's proposing lower density.
Any other questions for Mr. White? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You have to open the public hearing to make this official, and then we may have other questions later.
Are we here?
Would you like to? That's fine.
Okay.
Please come forward.
That's okay.
State your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Joe Sutherland. I'm out at 21125 East Hampton Place. That's Tallgrass over there, Piccadilly in East Hampton. I'm a member of the East Arapahoe County Advisory Planning Commission, but I am here as a citizen interested. So, and my comment is based on being a citizen. The concerns I am about density, of course, is I'm really passionate about all those great F-16s that take off out of Buckley and maintaining the crash zone. I think that's important. But what really jumped up that made me want to comment, I lived in Seoul, Korea for 8 years. And it's an amazing place because you've got all these millions of people lumped into the square miles of Denver City. And it works because you've got this hyper high density, one of the highest density places on earth. And they've got an amazing transit system, the buses, it's great. I just watched an article on the news tonight about how Metro is talking about cutting bus routes, and they're going to, they can't even make what they've got work. And then I hear someone making a comment that, wow, if we increase density, we increase walkability. Now, that's great in Korea. When I lived on the 29th floor and I took the elevator down to the arcade, literally walked through the arcade up the next building, and that's where I worked. It was really cool. And the arcades had all the shops and all the stores. Well, you just jam more people here in Arapahoe County. What I see is, even where I live in Tallgrass, you're not walking anywhere. I mean, the closest place to go shopping is the little Walmart, and you drive. And to do everything, you've got to drive, and there's no transportation to speak of. And the idea of slamming in more people to make it more walkable, are we going to put stores and everything right there in those neighborhoods too, like they have in urban Korea? No, I think you're making parking problems. You're making traffic problems. Transportation won't address it. That's my comment. I think as far as getting things lined up and pieces in, I'm all for it. I get that. I'm an engineer, but at the same time, are we changing this just hoping that the developers will go out and develop cheaper property? we know that's not going to happen. Let's keep it the way it is. If people want changes, they run it through the board. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Thank you very much, Mr. Sutherland, for coming. And bring it back to the Planning Commission. Any other comments from the Planning Commission? I did notice that in the resolution, the way it's drafted, not that I agree with it, it says that the county staff referred the proposed amendment to referral agencies and received no comment. I would think that should be amended to reflect that you did receive several comments. So, I think you want us to approve or turn this down. Is that correct?
I approve, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. In the case of LR 19-006 Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Urban Residential Densities, the Planning Commission has read the proposed plan amendment and staff report and has considered additional information presented during the public hearing. We do find ourselves in agreement with staff findings 1 through 4, set forth in the staff report dated December 12, 2019, and therefore approve the amendment.
Madam Chair, I second.
We have a second to the motion by Mrs. Latsis. The original motion was made by Jamie Woolman. Any other comments from the Planning Commission? Otherwise, we will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's have a show of hands. I didn't. 4 in favor. All those opposed? Passes 4-3. So I guess that is the end of our agenda for tonight. Our next meeting is January 21st, and we will call the meeting adjourned at 7:25.